So if you're at W right here and you have to move 5 spaces to the right, W, X, Y, Z, and then it's got to come back to A, B. So, and then also don't forget the uppercase and lowercase. Cipher. So let's do this in Python. So we're going to walk through this as a class. We're going to do pseudocode first. So what do we need? What do we first need to do? Create a method that takes in a string and a number. Okay. What do we need next? Let's start out with like the initial data types or data structures that we need to implement. Like what are we going to need to get the indexes of the alphabet?
Create a string containing the letters of the alphabet sequentially.
Create a string of letters of the alphabet. Upper and lower. So create a variable, 2 variables. There's multiple ways to solve this too.
Or you could look up the ASCII codes and figure out what the numbers are.
And do that as well. Seeing multiple solutions utilizing that. I'm going to need a current index variable. I'm going to need a new index variable. I'm going to need an answer variable. Now, how do I tackle spaces, extra characters? There's a couple ways you can do this. Use regex, or you can even just create a validation string and just have all the various extra special characters. So the first time I saw this, I just used a validation string because I didn't want to deal with regex. Pretty much, I just didn't want to deal with it. Of possible special characters. And now what? So I'll need to loop through the string. So create a for loop to loop through the string. And in here, I'm going to do all my conditional like if statements. So say if value at index I equals or is value index I what is it? Is in the validation string. I'm just going to push or append that value to the answer string. So this first if statement is going to check the value at the index of my string. So, and then it's going to check to see if that value is in the validation string. That means it's essentially a special character or space or something like that. And then if it is, I don't need to utilize the index. I don't need to look at the new index in the alphabet. So I just need to append that because we want to keep like spaces, periods, question marks, things like that. Else if I can test if the current value is and exists in the upper variable. So if it's in there, I'm in this else if statement. And then I can test if like the current index in the alphabet, or yeah, on the current values index. There's going to be a bunch of essentially if statements. Index plus the number parameter that's passed into the function is greater than or equal to 0 and what is it? Is less than the length of the upper alphabet. And if that's true, I'm getting the new index. New index is equal to the current index plus the new that number parameter. That's else. I think it's else if. The current index plus the number param is less than 0. So it's going like left. That means it's a negative, essentially the negative number. That's, I probably could have done that. I probably could have done an if statement just to check if whether or not that the number parameter is a positive or negative. But this is the first time I'm going through it. I just want to make it work. I can go back and refactor later.
But even if it is a negative number, you add it, doesn't it just do the same thing?
Well, if it's a negative number,
Yeah, if you add a negative number, it just it's the same thing. Yeah, it'll do the same thing because it's adding it with the left.
but if it shifts it to, so if the actual number is negative, there isn't a negative index in the upper variable. So, yeah. No, yeah. So
With index plus the number can still be positive.
right. Yes. Yes.
So if you're at -5 and your index is for z, it's 25. 25 minus 5 is still within the
Right. No, yeah.
No, I see where you're.
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay.
Where am I? Current index. I'm doing the length of the upper because it's a negative, so I'm just taking the length of the upper. I'm in the upper if statement plus the current index plus the number. And that's the new index. The last one is just else. The new index equals the current index plus the number minus the length of the upper. Then after it does all that, I can just take the answer and just append the value plus equals the upper at the new index. I could have done this within each if statement, but essentially I want to do this same thing, but instead of upper, I want to do lower. see if, oh yeah, I forgot to add a current index variable initially. Current index equals the upper, then there's a, I'm already like, I'm not even pseudocoding right now. So yeah, so I need to get the current index variable will be equal to the the index of the essentially the current index. Yeah, there's actually a built-in method to get the index of that. So it'd be upper dot index current index equals the value or the index of the value in the upper variable. Actually, it'd be the lower one right here. I'll just copy this. Then at the very end, after you break out of that for loop, I'm going to replace upper with lower. And then I'm just going to like return the answer. So there's actually there is a more efficient way to do this, but this is just, first time when I get it to work. So create a method that takes in a string and a number right here, the shift amount, and then the first thing, we create two variables of strings of letters of the alphabet, upper and lower. So let's do upper equals A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. I'll just copy and paste it. So there we got the two variables. And then we got to have a current index started at 0. So have a new index variable, start that at 0. We have the answer, which is just an empty string to begin with. And now the validation string, answer variable, validation variable, string of possible special characters. So that's what I did initially, just pretty much every possible, and we have also a space here. Oh, what? Something happened. What did I just do? Now for the for loop, for I in range, the length of the input string. Now it's just like a bunch of if statements. If string at I in validation. So this is an if statement for string at value I at value 0 is in the validation if it is contained in there. We're just going to append that. So answer plus equals string at I. Now here we're going to be doing checking of whether or not it's in the upper. I'm going to check to see if that value at index 0 is in the upper variable. If it's not, we're going to check it's in the lower variable. If string at I and upper. Now here we have more if statements. First we got to do the current index equals upper. No, there's a built-in method. Does anybody know what the built-in method to get an index?
Index.
What is it?
Index.
Let's see the index. So how to get the index of a string Python. All right, index. Just see what that does. We take in the string and we append the index. Okay. Upper. Index string at that value. So that's the current index, because I don't want to be like, anyway. So if the current index plus the, what do we call it? Shift amount is greater than or equal to 0, and the current index plus the shift amount is less than the length of upper, I think it's -1. You're dealing with indexes, not necessarily length. And then we get the new index equals current index plus shift amount. Elif current index plus shift amount is greater than or less than 0. That means it's negative. The new index equals the length of the upper plus the current index plus the shift amount. Else, the new index equals current index plus shift number amount minus the length of the upper. And after all that, we're just gonna answer plus equals the upper, the new index. So all that is just for one side of whether or not it's an upper or lowercase answer. There's another, I've seen other people do, just make every first, it loops through the, like another way to do it, it loops through the existing string and it stores, it tests of whether or not that value is an upper, and it stores that index in an array. And then it goes ahead and makes everything lowercase. So we don't have to do like these 2 if statements to test if it's upper or lower. So it's only testing it in like one string. And then at the very end, it has the solution all lowercase letters, but then it's got an array of where the indexes of where the uppercase letters are, and it loops through and it just makes those values uppercase again, or vice versa, makes them lowercase. So that's another interesting. I see that. That's, yeah. We were dealing with 2 for loops. I mean, it's the same from like a O(n) standpoint, but yeah, it's definitely less code, and I'd say, yeah, less code and probably easier to kind of comprehend what's going on. So essentially, I'm just going to copy this whole thing, because I'm just going to do this same thing just with a lower. I'm going here. At the very end, I'm just going to return the answer. Or print the answer as well. So let's just test this out. I'm going to go back to Caesar Cipher. I'm going to use this one as an example. If I did everything right, should work. Does that equal this? Now we can go back and refactor, optimize, okay, but that's a solution. Any questions? What questions do you have? Was this one on the difficulty spectrum? How hard was it?
Too bad, not too bad. I think it's
You determine that by length of time.
Well, just like from, I was just curious, just like get a gauge of how
I
hard
think
this
it's
one.
too difficult. The biggest, I mean, obviously the biggest part is trying to be able to wrap around and
Yeah.
lower spaces or
Yeah.
errors.
Like the first time I did this one, I didn't realize, I think I didn't realize that there could be a negative number. So I was like, oh crap, so I had to go back and refactor it. And that was, all right. We're gonna go ahead and take a 7-minute break. Be back at 8:55, and then we'll go into bubble sort as well as, what was it, Pig Latin.
Hey,
Was it the
Cool.
or no, it was wedding.
Yeah, what?